Thanks for joining us again at Beyond the Shelf. We are continuing our interviews with our authors. This is part 2. Part 1 should have happened before, but in case you missed it, please back up and listen to part 1 as well, because we had so many great authors. We had to do 2 parts. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Dawn. And here's our interviews.
We are here now with Patrick Kincaid. Thank you, Patrick, for coming. This is Patrick's first time coming to our event. So Patrick, we're going to just dive right in. Please tell us, what is your genre of book?
Yeah, young adult, superhero, fantasy. I have 2.
Are they sequels?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a trilogy planned. Mm-hmm. I'm currently writing the 3rd one. I also put one out on just ebook of books 1 and 2 together.
Okay, and what will the name of the series be?
Well, I've kind of dubbed it the Electron series because that's the main character's superhero identity.
Okay.
Very Marvel of you.
Yes. I'm a huge nerd, so it works.
We love huge nerds, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Is fantasy one of your favorite genres to read, or do you tend to read different things than what you write?
I don't really read a lot, oddly enough. I'm one of those that I'll just sit down and write, and I'll write for hours, but you put a book in front of me, and I'm like 2 pages in and nodding off.
Do you do graphic novels or comics?
I was big into comics in high school, and I graduated into graphic novels eventually. Mm-hmm. I do read, but not a lot.
So since you do this superhero thing, I'm going to ask a really kind of bizarre question.
Okay.
So when you're writing, do you have something that's like you're writing kryptonite that kind of like stops you in your tracks? And
it's just about anything.
A squirrel?
Yeah, a lot. For years I thought I was ADD or ADHD, so like I'll be in the zone and someone will say something, I'm like, what? And then like 20 minutes ago, I'm like, I haven't typed a single word. Bye. And then I'll just continue going along. But I'll get into a moment and it's like, all right, I'm kind of at a block. I'll just start scrolling through Facebook or Google or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, again, I haven't written anything. Get back to that.
The distractions are there for sure. Finding a quiet place free from distraction is important for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you have illustrations in your book at all?
No.
Okay.
I did have a friend that draws, but I haven't really reached out.
Did you design the cover for your...
It was just a template on Amazon.
Okay.
No, that's perfectly fine. They do re-releases of books with different covers all the time.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Rick Riordan, and he's constantly putting out different covers for the same book.
There's always room for improvement, even if you feel like, the work
that, and you get those diehards who are like, oh, I don't have this print.
So, Patrick, we have like one more question for you. So, based on your genre that you write, what is the favorite book that you've ever read from that genre?
Well, actually, I mentioned the Rick Riordan. I got to go with any of those.
The Percy Jackson series?
Yes, that one particularly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Patrick.
We are here now with Patricia Miller. Thank you, Patricia, for joining us. And this is your first time at our author event, correct?
Yes, it is, yes.
Have you done a lot of events, or is this your first one ever?
No, I've done quite a few.
Okay.
Last year, I think I did about 8.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think I'll do more this year because things are opening up more since COVID's settled down.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. What is your genre, Patricia?
So I started out with young adult, light sci-fi with a little sweet romance in there. And that only came about because I had a crazy dream. So I had this crazy dream in the middle of the night, and I woke up like panting, and my husband's like, are you okay? And I had to write it all down because it was a crazy, scene. And then the next day I got up, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So what I did was I wrote the backstory. And then at the end of the first book in the trilogy is the scene that I dreamt. So that's where I started. But my real love is mystery. Okay. I've always loved mysteries. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. I've got every book that she's ever written, every short story. I see every adaptation.
And anyone that's ever listened to the podcast knows I love Agatha Christie as
She's
well.
awesome.
She is the queen for a reason.
She most definitely is. So mysteries are really my first love, and the only reason I wrote the other one first was because that dream was just so impressed upon me that I just had to get it out. The mysteries that I write are Agatha Christie inspired. It doesn't have to just be a murder mystery. There could be puzzles to solve, things like that. The great thing about my mysteries that I'm very excited about is because I go into high schools and middle schools and talk to the art classes, and I've got partnered with the Educational Services Commission that gets the word out too. I do a call for submissions for sketches. And then the kids all turn them in by a certain date, and then I look through them and I choose one for the front cover, one for the back cover, and several inside.
I can't tell you how much I love that. I just think that you're supporting budding young artists and how exciting that is for them. I really love that.
It's a great partnership. How it started out was I was writing on the bleachers when my son was in a 12 and under travel ball league. And a mother said, "What are you doing?" I told her what I was doing, and she said, "Oh, that's really cool." She said, "My son draws." And I said, "Does he?" And so I was talking with him. He goes, "Yeah, I can kind of draw." It was so impressive. He was 12 years old. It got on the front of Mysterious Tales of the Unexplained Volume 1. I immediately was like, let's negotiate price right now. Because I was so that's what kind of was the budding and the start for the idea. If I could do that for a cover, why can't I do that for scenes inside?
Yeah. So Mysterious Tales Volume 1 and 2. Will there be a Volume 3?
Yes, it's due out in April.
Oh, what? So it's already at the publisher, ready to go?
Yep.
Oh, and is it here today?
No.
Any chance?
I wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
What is the first book of your mystery sci-fi? Not mystery.
No, the
mystery,
sci-fi romance.
The sci-fi romance one. Yes. What is
Okay.
that first book called?
So it's called Joshua: Life After Theos. So when I woke up from my dream, I knew which ones were the aliens and which ones were the Earthlings. They looked exactly alike, but in my dreams, the aliens had special powers.
Do you think you'll do any more sci-fi?
I don't know. I was a big Star Trek fan when I was little. Yeah. I don't know. Depends. I've got pretty good sales on both, but mystery seems to be the hot.
And that's where your heart is, really.
And it's where I could put them together, I suppose. That would be
Star
really
Trek
Absolutely.
meets Agatha Christie.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you
Space
go.
mystery.
That would be really cool.
All right.
That'd be really
There's
cool.
the inspiration for
And
me.
I love Sherlock Holmes books too and stories. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Patricia. We hope that you have fun today and hope that you'll join us again next year. And thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So we have with us Don Ruff. And Don, you're a humor writer.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself pretty funny?
When I was in high school, I was extremely shy, and the only time I got noticed was when I was funny. So now in my 60s, I've perfected the humor and now can write books.
And so you've written, is it 2 books now, or do you have more than that?
I have written my 3rd book. Interesting thing, when I was in my late 50s, lost a good job, couldn't get another good job, so I ended up working at a facility that wasn't really that great. So instead of being angry, I wrote a book to make fun of that kind of industry. And then my 2nd book, another author wrote a book about his house, mentioned my house in his book. So I got even with him. I wrote a book about my house and mentioned his house in my book. And since my wife is a hosta fanatic, she has over 700 varieties of hostas in the ground. And because I'm the husband of this hosta fanatic and I don't ever have time for naps, I wrote a book about hostas from a non-gardener perspective, being married to a gardener.
So that's what inspired you. You just woke up one day and said, I'm going to write a book about this experience. And it helped kind of get you through that hard time, I would assume, when you lost your job and stuff.
When I was going through a difficult time, I read the book called Teacher, about Helen Keller's Teacher, and that inspired me a lot. And I wanted to write a book similar to that, but with a humorous perspective. There's a lot of things that happen in our lives, and we need to overcome them. I find that humor helps me to overcome some issues, some things that go on, and I like to share that with other people.
Rather be laughing than crying all the time?
You haven't lived and understand adulthood until you're eating breakfast and crying at the same time. You also understand adulthood when you're at someone's funeral and visit with friends and are laughing with friends while you're at a funeral. So there's a huge gamut of experiences that you go through. Maybe if humor helps you get through it.
Do you have any other comedic authors that you really enjoy reading?
Dave Barry. I probably read Dave Barry quite a bit. And because of writing, it's been about 10, 12 years since I've read any of his books, because I'm a type of person that will get influenced by others. So I made sure that I didn't read any of his books, just in concern that I might, pick up some of his mannerisms of writing.
Do you have kids? Do they read your books?
I do not have any children. My
Okay.
wife has 2. Yeah, all my family, of course, have read my book. It's kind of like being a car salesman. When you write books, you contact your family and friends and talk them into it. Everybody, I'll get phone calls late at night and say, I'm reading your book and it's hilarious, and now I can't sleep.
So now I got to tell you about it.
Yeah.
So, but your wife's a big supporter of you and your
Yes. She says, how many did you sell?
writing? Oh,
No, she's
she wants to buy more plants.
yes.
I'm learning so much today.
I know.
She tells them, hey, this is my husband. He wrote a book about hostas. And then she takes the time to tell her all about her hostas and all about the book. And so it's kind of taken her out of her shell
Okay.
and being a little more outgoing with people.
Well, I had no idea there were 700 varieties.
Well, there's over 3,000.
I had no idea that there was over 3,000 varieties. That
And
is amazing.
The motto at our house, the more hostas, the more fun.
Okay.
And the less naps that I get, of course.
Well, thank you for joining us, Don. This is your second year coming to the Orville event.
The library staff is awesome.
Thank you. So we're here with Greg Sheets, and Greg, this is your first book you've published?
Yes, that's right. I wrote and illustrated it.
Oh, so you did both.
Right.
That is awesome. Did like grandchildren or something like that inspire you to write this
Absolutely.
book?
I've been doing graphic design as my professional career all my life. I don't get the opportunity to do hand-drawn, fun kind of illustrations with that. It's a lot of brochure, logo work, that sort of thing. So I just had this idea one day that I wanted to, as a Christmas present, present them with an actual printed book. So this idea hit me for rhymes and animals, and somehow an aardvark and amusement park popped in my head, and letter A, great place to start, let's go from there. I tried to fill it with animals that are unusual to some people. I mean, I even have parents telling me, I had to Google some of these, I didn't know what this was. But I do have some of my favorite unusual animals in there as well. I love pangolins, if you're familiar with what they are. Kind of like an armored anteater. Looks like a pine cone with a tail and whatnot, but very cool animal. So I have a pangolin in there. It just was a lot of fun. And so I got the books printed, and I had to get a certain amount, of course, because I'm self-publishing. So I got them printed, gave them as gifts, and then I got asked to go to a school book fair, which I went to. It was well received, and everyone that's gotten it has really liked it, enjoyed it. They say it makes me laugh. I'm learning about some of these animals I didn't know about. So laughing and learning in a book, that makes me real happy. So.
Oh, yeah. I was telling you out before we started the interview, I actually saw your book and read it online, and I'm going to be purchasing it for my grandchild that's coming in August. So I'm very excited
Oh, that
for
is
that.
awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I think the kids enjoy the animals, and I think I'm finding the parents are enjoying it as much too. So.
Oh, I loved
Did
it.
you have a lot of practice reading picture books before you
know
wrote
what?
this one?
I don't. In fact, I have a school engagement at the end of the month. This will be my first time in front of several classes of kindergartners. The funny thing is, I asked the teacher, I go, well, should I have like an open question form? She goes, no, you do not want to leave kindergartners open. We'll come up with some, because they will tell you all about their day. They said, you're going to start reading, and they're going to go, why do you have a blue shirt on? And, it's
Yeah.
So I kind of It'll be new. It'll be fun. I'm going to put my book into a PowerPoint presentation so they can see it up on a screen and just talk to them about the process, read to them.
So, Greg, do you plan to do any more?
I've started my second book. It's funny, I had a small bookstore owner tell me this topic she gets asked about a lot. I'm a big Bigfoot cryptid nut.
My
So,
husband would love that.
so I'm doing, my second book is titled Bigfoot Walks Barefoot. I've got a third of it penciled out. I do it in thirds as I go through the alphabet. I pencil it, ink it, color it. Then it gives me a break from the process between each step. But it's an ABC of monsters, myths, and aliens. So it's got like 4 lines of rhymes, 4 lines of verse. So it's kind of cool because it's kind of a next step up for readers too. They can start with this book, which is very simple, and then move on to that if that interests them. But I'm told there's a lot of interest out there, so
I want to read it already.
so I can't wait. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and that's the part about it. If you got to enjoy it because I think it comes through.
So did you design your T-shirt?
No, actually, sadly, isn't that sad? I didn't. I should have, but I thought it was cool.
It
so.
is cool.
To put into context,
Yes.
because you can't see his T-shirt, it is a giraffe holding a big stack of books with its neck, and it says, "Ask me about my book." So I think that's super cute.
That's
and
great.
since you wrote a book about animals,
That's right.
that's
That's
perfect.
right. And I do have a giraffe in my intro pages, so
All right.
I figure it works.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you.
Have fun.
All right.
All right, so we're here with Eric Steidel. Thanks for joining us, Eric. I think this is your first time here. You weren't here last year, correct?
I was not. This is my first time, yeah.
And tell us a little bit about the genre of book that you write.
So I write 2 different genres. The first is just children's picture books, but those I really try and focus specifically on just positive message books for children. My first 2 books that I have published, both the first one really it deals with special needs children. It's not explicitly stated, but the main character is a boy with autism, and so it's kind of a positive, inspirational message that is also universal to all children, I think.
And what is the title of that book?
So that one's called The First Ostrich to Fly.
Okay.
So basically, without getting into the whole book, though, the boy comes home from school and he's had a rough day, and so he asks his grandma, like, why am I different? Why can't I do what the other kids can do? As grandmas do. Instead of just telling him the answer, she tells him a story. Through her story, he comes to realize that, the only person that can put limitations on him is him. And so at the end, she's like, you could be the first ostrich to fly. Then I also have it's a middle grade fiction, but it's specifically biblical fiction. It's taking stories from the Bible and retelling them from minor characters' perspectives, most of whom are younger people. So it's taking those Bible stories and making them easier to engage with for a younger audience, I think.
And so you've published 3 books, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. I self-published the 2 children's books. My teen novel called Ayal the Arrow Boy was published through Crosslink Publishing. It's a small independent publisher.
And so what are you working on now?
So I've got, like every author, I have about seven books I'm working on. As far as the children's side of things, I've got one. It's called the Shark Tooth Fairy. It's going to be a fantastical nonfiction, so it'll be teaching animal facts like in a fantastical way. So teaching about sharks through what if there was a shark tooth fairy? That would be a really tough job, right?
Because sharks continually lose and grow more teeth, right?
Exactly, yeah. Most sharks can lose 35,000 teeth in a lifetime, right? So if there really was a shark tooth fairy, that would be a tough job. And so it'll be like a nonfiction book telling facts about animals through tough jobs in the animal world. So the shark tooth fairy, a hairdresser for a porcupine, stuff like that, a perfumist for a skunk, something like that.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. So that's the one that you will be publishing, or is one that you have in the works?
Have in the works.
Okay.
As far as my teen series, I'm doing a trilogy based on the founding of the early church in Philippi. In the Bible, there were 3 people who founded that church, and they're just from 3 insanely different walks of life, right? One was a jailer who was probably a Roman army veteran. Then there was a young slave girl who the Bible says she was demon possessed, but she could tell visions and predict the future and stuff like that. And the last was a lady named Lydia, who was very wealthy, and she sold purple cloth, right? And she had like 2 homes. And so just 3 very different walks of life, but kind of telling their story through, for Lydia and the jailer, it's through their perspective as well as their children. And then for the slave girl, it's from her own perspective. So just kind of telling their story of their conversion to Christianity and what message we can take out of that. Right now I'm about 8 chapters into, it's called The Jailer's Son. And so it's about like, where is your identity, right? And I think that that's a message that's extremely important for young people today as well. You know, like with what do you identify? And like, if that was taken away from you, who would you be, right?
Very good. Okay.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thank you, and we hope that you'll join us again next year.
I'd love to. This has been awesome.
Good. Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
So now we are talking with Cece Warrens. Thank you, Cece, for joining us today. This is your second time coming to the library for the local authors event, and we appreciate you coming a second year and for taking the time to talk with us. First off, we'd like to know, what is your genre of book that you write mostly?
I write Christian suspense and mysteries.
How many books have you written thus far?
I have 8 books so far, and my 9th one is in the works.
And will that be coming out later this year?
Typically, I aim for the fall every year, so probably around October.
And your main character of at least one of your series is Holly Cross?
Yes, that's correct.
And you just released a book about her last month?
This past fall.
Oh, okay. And what was that title of that one?
That one was Cross the Line.
And the first one's called Crisscross,
Mm-hmm.
is that correct?
Yes.
And do you have only like female character driven books, or do you have some male ones that are leads as well? Or
So far, they're primarily female. I do also always have a strong male character walking alongside the female. For the Holly novels, it is a detective who kind of takes on the role of being a father figure to her. And he actually took on more of a prominent role than I intended. I expected him to be a background character, but that didn't work out. So he's a more prominent character. I do have a book, possibly a series, planned with 2 main male characters in the future, police detectives.
so if you've started on that, what do you find most difficult about writing about characters of the opposite sex then?
Ooh, most difficult. I'm not really sure. I think my psychology degree helps a lot in the accuracy. And then, of course, my husband is great. If I write something that is completely non-male, he will tell me, a guy wouldn't say that. And so then I'm back to trying to figure out how to rephrase it. So that's probably the hardest thing is getting the thinking right and some of the ways that men phrase things.
How many books do you have in the works right now?
I always have ideas, but I'm currently working on, it's the first time I've done this, but I'm working on 3 books at one time. So I'm working on the one with Holly. I haven't disclosed the title of that one yet. And then I'm working on a follow-up to Firefly Diaries, which was, the setting for that one was local. It was originally based in Apple Creek, which I then changed the name to Cherry Creek. So I'm writing a second one following those characters.
Oh, great.
And then also a children's story following Holly Jordan and her sister when they were kids.
Oh, fun. In your writing, have you ever hidden any like Easter eggs that people would be like, oh, I kind of remember that from another, have you ever hidden anything like that? Has anybody found it and asked you about it?
The only time I've done that was actually with Firefly Diaries. It is completely set apart from the Holly novels and the Seeking Justice books. But in one of the chapters, because Noelle is an author, her agent reaches out and says, hey, I found this story that you might be interested in writing about, and it involves this man who was recently arrested for assaulting several women. And that is actually a reference to Holly's foster brother going on trial and being put in prison. And some of my readers caught on to it immediately, and other ones, when someone mentioned it, they were like, oh my gosh, I missed that. Can you tell me where that is?
Oh, that's really cool. Based on like your genre that you write, do you have a favorite book in that genre?
I don't have a favorite book, but I do have a favorite series. The author is Carrie Stewart Parks, and she wrote a first-person suspense series called the Gwen Marcy novels. And first person is my absolute favorite to read because I really feel like you get to dive into the characters and know them so much more. You're walking in their shoes and seeing through their eyes, and she does a phenomenal job with that. And of course, it's a fun mystery to unravel.
Fantastic. Well, we're so glad that you were able to join us today, and we hope that you'll join us again in the future. We'd love to have you back.
Yes.
So I appreciate being able to be here, and I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Okay, so we're here with Shirley Wyrock, and Shirley has done some editing and devotional writing. And this is your second time at our author festival. Is
Yes,
that right?
it is.
It is, right. Did I also see that you have some prints too?
I do. I can't decide whether I'm an author or a photographer, and so the two things interweave a lot.
Do you photograph local things, or what kind of things do you?
Everything. Anything from my backyard to my travels and trips, and I enjoy meeting new people through photography workshops.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book that you edited?
Yes, it's called Stories in Stained Glass, and our church had stained glass windows that were in some state of disrepair. They really needed to be cleaned and re-leaded. And one of our congregants, Gary Berkey, took on stained glass as a hobby in his retirement. And so one by one, he started taking these windows out, and they're gorgeous, just beautiful windows. And it ended up being a partnership because he discovered that some of the broken pieces of glass he could not match. So he took those pieces out, and Mary Alice Roush, a local art teacher, school teacher, artist, designed medallions to put into the windows to replace the broken glass. And those medallions tell some of the stories from the Bible. And so she designed the pieces, and then Gary built them with glass and incorporated them into the windows. So we have lovely windows that'll last for years now. And the Berkey family wanted to document that, and we wanted some record for history, so that 100 years from now, when somebody looks at that building and looks at those windows, they'll realize how that came about.
That's fantastic. I love that story.
How many devotional books have you written?
I've only done one,
Okay.
and people do keep saying, "Are you writing another book?" Maybe.
I understand what a devotional book is, but does this have a theme in particular?
It does not have a theme. My congregation, we did not have Sunday school in the summer, and I decided we really ought to have some sort of educational something to offer in the summers. So I started writing these one-page devotionals and including some of my photography, and I would put them on display in our chapel on Sunday mornings and leave them up all week, and then the next Sunday morning I would do a new one. So after 3 summers of that, I had between 30 and 40 devotionals written. Our minister preaches from the lectionary, which is a 3-year cycle of readings in the biblical text. So they don't follow a theme other than that they followed the lectionary for each week. Mm-hmm. As this went along, people in the congregation said, "You really should do something with these, not just throw them out at the end of the week." So after I had this nice little collection, when I retired, I turned them into a book.
So is it like a 365-day?
No, there's only maybe between 30 and 35 devotions in there.
Okay.
So you could use it once a week and have it last for several months, or you could do one a day and it would last a month.
And what was the name of your book, please?
Following the Breadcrumbs. And the title actually came from a photography workshop that I was in. When I was telling the story of my retirement, people said, "Well, what are you going to do after you retire?" And I said, "I don't know." And they didn't like that answer. And so I don't know how it came to me, but I started to say, "I'm just going to follow the breadcrumbs." And they were okay with that. That made more sense than "I don't know," even though I don't think it was any clearer.
Yeah.
And when I told that story, the people in the workshop said, "That's the title of your book."
Oh,
So
that's neat.
that's where the title of the book came from.
Great. Well, thank you, Shirley, for being here. Thank you for coming a second time. And we do plan to do this every year, so hopefully we'll see you next year as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're here with Cassandra Zook. She is an illustrator. She also happens to be a Orville Library employee, and we love her very much. Thanks for joining us, Cassie.
You're welcome.
Cassie, can you tell us a little bit about what you have illustrated, please?
I have illustrated a book with my friend Rebecca Greenfield. You can't start laughing. 'Cause
I'm not laughing. A little backstory, Cassie and I
Wow.
have known each other for 30 plus years, so we might get a little silly, but we'll try not to.
No.
Okay.
So tell us about the book that you've illustrated, Cassie.
I illustrated a book called Dusternuffle that my friend Rebecca Greenfield wrote. She contacted me during like 2020 because we had started it when we were in high school. She had sent it to some publishers and didn't get any interest, and so she reached out to me during quarantine in 2020 and thought, well, let's try this. And I had just decided to send my kids to school and was like, well, I have some time. And I was getting into surface pattern design more. And so I was working from home and I thought it would be fun. And so we did. And it was.
What is surface pattern design?
Surface pattern design is any design that you see like on surfaces of things, like wallpaper and textile design, and even like anything you buy at the store has to be designed by someone. And so all the art's made by somebody and it's licensed, and so every item you buy, the artist gets a percentage. And so that is surface pattern design.
So if somebody would want to find one of those pieces of work, or you do commission work as well,
I do.
How do they find you?
On my website. My website is just my name, so it's really easy, CassandраZook.com.
And Zook is Z-O-O-K.
Yep.
So Cass, I don't even know if I said thanks for being here, but I do appreciate that you came today, even though we are silly. I'm really glad you're here. Other than Dusternuffle, have you illustrated any other books of any sort?
No.
Have you ever done like a writing journal of any sort?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
I have my sermon journal, which is also available on my website. I have a lot of stuff on my website. I have cups and mugs and stickers and all kinds of stuff. But the sermon journal is basically, it came out of making little sermon notes. I love to draw and doodle all the time on everything. And I was doing it in church one day, and I had a friend say something to me, and so I started making little printouts, and then you talked to me about putting them in a book, and so that is what I did. And I did that first like 4 years ago, and then I did it again. I reprinted it last year, and so I have those available too.
She does a wonderful job, and when you're writing sermon notes, and it's just really cool. She has things you can color in it, and it helps me too to be busy while I'm listening.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and a lot of people like to take notes. I think that's really, really
Yeah.
cool. Do you have any aspirations to illustrate another book at
I
all?
would like to illustrate another book. Right now, I'm working here, and I'm homeschooling, so it takes a lot of time. But I love to create things. Art is interesting because it's like there's no like one way to do it.
Sure.
Writing is the same way. Any like creative thing, you get into it all different kinds of ways.
Cass, thanks for coming today. Love talking with you, and I really, really, truly do look forward to what you do next.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Cassie,
You
and for
are
being
welcome.
here.
We had so much fun interviewing our authors, and we hope that you guys learned a lot about some of these local authors, and you'll be able to support them any way that you can. We have a lot of fun things coming up in April, and here's just a couple.
So we are celebrating Earth Day on 2 Saturdays here in April. On the 15th, you can come and get 3 boxes of paper shredded. We'll have San Mandy shredding here in our parking lot, and you can bring things that you need shredded, and they'll shred it on the spot. And then on the 22nd, there's lots of things happening. There's free trees being handed out. Those were donated. Free seeds being handed out. Our seed exchange is continuing. And we'll also have a gardening talk from the Ohio Victory Gardens. And of course, there's children's activities that day.
And then our biannual book sale is coming up. It is going to run from Thursday, April 20th to Saturday, April 22nd. That always takes place downstairs. Just come and look through our books and buy them all so we don't have to worry about it later.
That's great. No, we have a lot of great things, donations and things that aren't really moving in our collection that get to go into the book sale. And there's always good deals, of course. You can always check out our website for more activities and events happening at the library for storytime information, book club, cookbook club, any of that. Just go onto the library website and look at our calendar.
And as always, thanks for joining us. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Dawn, and we hope to see you at the library soon.